Okay, so we're on Daf Nun Aleph. And we're in the sugya about mazonos, that a man has to support his. There's not, but I forgot what we're talking about already. 1 second. Yesterday's sugya. The mazonos of the person is not mechuyev mazonos of his daughter while he's alive, but after he dies, that's the Kesuvos of Benon Nukva, and there's a chiyuv that from his estate, the daughters get mazonos. They don't get Yerush, but they get mazonos. And the sugi was if it's even from metaltalim or only from karka. That was yesterday's sugya, and it's interesting because yesterday we had Rabbi Menuna, the one who started the sugya, and he made a drasha from the Kesuvos to say that it's only from karka. Afterwards, the Gemara brought also Rav Yisrael by Yosef that said there was a takanas aliyah maybe that by aliyah skinu that they should also collect from a taltalim. The Gemara wanted to know if they hold like him or not. Rav and Shmuel weren't clear. We couldn't tell from Rav and Shmuel if they had like him or not. Then the Gemara brought a couple of stories that some people did want to pass him like that, but others didn't let them, and only to collect from karka, that the mazonas of the daughters is only collected from the karka, not from a taltalim. And that was more or less the whole sugya yesterday. Other different stories about those who wanted to. The last Gemara said by the Yosem and Yisomah, there was a case over there that Rabbi did pass him to give to the Yisomim, to the Yisomos, to the Yisomah from the Talmud. But over there was for the benefit of the Yosom, that he should have his sister around to help him out. But that was the benefit of his benefit, not for her. So far, the Gemara seemed to say that the mazonos of the daughters is only collected from karka. And very surprising now, the Gemara in Daf Nun Aleph starts with a brisa, Tanu Rabbanan, and it shouldn't be a 2 das l'chor because it's continuation. And here the Gemara found a brisa about this issue, which we didn't mention any brisa until now. Till now we went with the Rabbi Nuna's drasha and then Aliyah of Rav Yisrael by Yosef to tell a story about the Takanas Aliyah, but we didn't bring any sources earlier than that. And here the Gemara starts Tanu Rabbanan. In short, the brisa is going to say a machlokes between Rebbe and Rav Shem ben Elazar, that according to Rebbe, even from the Taltalim, there's such a sheet that even from the Taltalim. And Rav Shem ben Elazar says dafka from karka, and we're going to pass like Rav Shem ben Elazar. We're going to go back to what we said, that's dafka from karka, not from a Taltalim. But it's very interesting to me that the Gemara didn't bring down the brisa right away. It started with the drasha of Rabbi Menuna and Aliyah, Rabbi Takanas Aliyah, and all that wrong. And then the Gemara now brings a brisa. It's very interesting. I didn't see it. I didn't look around. If anybody talks about how the Gemara arranges it. Tan Rabbanan.
So just what's the point? What is the question?
If after a man dies, that he's supposed to, so Tanai Ksuba is that he supports the daughters from his estate. Correct. The mazonas to the daughters after he dies. Correct. So is that only from karka or even from a taltalim?
Didn't we have Benon Nuchrin?
That was Rav Amuna's drasha. He said his drasha to say that since it goes together in the Ksuba, the Tanai Ksuba, so just like Benin Dichron is only from karka, so also even on Nukva. That was Rabbi Menuna. Then the Gemara said that there might have been a takana later on to collect even from Taltalim. That was yesterday's daf. And today the Gemara brings a brisa that talks about it, not about the drasha that you're saying about Benin Dichron, Benin Nukva, just from the din. What's the halacha? So Tana Rabbanan, Echad nechasim sheish lemachrayis, v'echad nechasim she'en lemachrayis, mo'usin lemazon lebanos. The Rebbe says that you do take even from a Taltalim. The chasim she'yesh lemachrayis means karka. That means real estate, and the chasam she'en lemachrayis means metaltalim. And he says that you take out from there to give food to the widow, mazon isha, and bonos. That's what we're talking about. That's also the bonos. The daughters are supposed to be supported from the estate. So Rebbe says even from the metaltalim, and that's what we're talking about. That was yesterday's sugya. Yesterday we didn't find some of that sober favors. Here's a price. Rebbe says even from the taltalim, but the Shemar Elazar is going to argue, and it's going to be pretty long. But till we get there, I just highlight what we're looking for. But Shemar Elazar is going to say in the Chasam Shein Lamachrayis, you don't take Labanis Ben Abanim. That means that if there's an estate and the sons are supposed to get Yerusha and the daughters are supposed to get Mazonos, you don't take away from the sons Yerusha to give to the daughters Mazonos from the Metaltalim. That's really what we're focusing on. That's what we're going to get to. But we'll read the whole brisa. He says more than that, but that's what we're focused on. That the Shemar Elazar says that the daughters don't get mazonos from a taltalim, only from karka, and that's how we're going to pass it. So here goes Shemar Elazar. Nechasim sheish lemachrayis motzin lebanos min abanim, or lebanos min abanos, or lebanim min abanim, or lebanim min abanos. B'nechasim merubim. Avalo lebanim min abanos b'nechasim what? What does all that mean? So nechasim sheish lemachrayis means karka. And then the Sefer is going to talk about the Chasam Shein Lamachrais, where it's highlighted on the Metaltalim. But first it talks about the Chasam Shein Lamachrais, Karka. You have real estate. So Motzi and Labanos Minabanim, that you do take from the sons Yerusha to give the daughters Mazonos. The sons are the ones who get Yerusha. The daughters get Mazonos. They're supported from the state. They don't get Yerusha, but they get the support. And you do take from Karka. You take away from the sons Yerusha to give to the daughters Mazonos. That's going to be the end. In 5 lines, we're going to say, but the Chasam Shein Lamachrais, you don't take from the daughters from the sons. That's why I highlighted it, just to get what we're looking for. But now we're going through the whole thing, and it says if it will be Yesh Lamachrais, so then you would take from the sons Yerusha to give to the daughters Mazonos. Also, the Banos, Minabanos, the Banim Minabanim. So that's a strange thing. What does it mean take from daughters from daughters? So Rashi says it's talking about their only daughters. There was no sons, no Yerusha, and since they're only daughters, so they get the Yerusha. So what does it mean take for the daughters from the daughters? So Rashi says that there are older girls and younger girls. The older girls are the ones who are the machers, and the little ones, they're kids. And the older ones took too much of the Yerusha, and they're not allowed to. So it doesn't have anything to do with Mazonos. It has to do with the Yerusha. They stole the Yerusha, so you take it away from them. It's strange that Gemara puts it all together. It's different subjects. This is a Geneva. That the older ones, they divided the Yerusha, and they forgot about the little kids. So you take it away from them, of course. And Banim and Abanim, if they are also.
What's the Chiddush?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I know the Chiddush is. It's not talking about Motzi.
No, they might be making excuses. They're kids. They don't know how to.
Okay, so you get apotropos for them. You have to divide it. You have to divide it equally, and then get an apotropos. Got to go to best. They should figure it out. Banim and Abanim, if they are sons also, they are bigger sons and younger sons, and they took the Yerusha on their own. So we tell them the younger sons get Yerusha also, even though they're little kids. We got to give them the Yerusha. Well, the Banim min Abanos min Chasim Merubim. What's the case of Banim and Abanos min Chasim Merubim? The Chasim Merubim means there's a lot of property, and the sons have a right to the Yerusha. The daughters have a right to Mazonos. By the Chasim Merubim. The Chasim Merubim means there's enough for everybody. There's enough that the sons should get the Yerusha even after you give the daughters Mazonos. We're going to see in a second. The next line is going to say the Chasim Merubim. It's only enough. The state wasn't enough to give both. It means if you give the daughters Mazonos, the sons are not going to get any Yerusha. So the daughters get it. The daughters Mazonos goes before the sons Yerusha. That's in the second one. Here, Nechasim Rubim means there's a lot of Nechasim, and there's enough to give the daughters Mazonos, and also the sons get Yerusha. But the daughters took too much. The daughters, whoever was taking care of this, they gave the whole Yerusha, so to speak, to the daughters for their Mazonos. But the sons, but there's enough left after the Mazonos to give to the sons also. So you take it away. You take from the Banos. You take from the Banim, Min Abanos, Min Nechasim Rubim. If there was a lot of property, and the daughters took too much for their Mazonos, so you can take it away from them and give it to the sons who are supposed to get Yerusha. If there's only the Nechasim Muatim, means it's only a small estate that the father left over, and after you give the daughters their Mazonos, there's nothing left for the sons to get Yerusha. So then you don't take it away from them. So there's a lot of side issues over here that have nothing to do with our subject. That you can't steal, and if you steal, take it away from them. And there's a din about Mazonos that if there's not enough for everybody to the sons, so then the daughters get the Mazonos and they don't get anything. If there is enough, so then they get the Mazonos, they get the leftover Yerusha, and even if they took too much, you give it back. But that's all talking about Karka. And the main point we wanted to say was that by Karka, you take Mazonos from the sons to give to the daughters. But the Chasam Shein Lamachrais, if it's the Taltalim, we'll see in the Banim and Abanim, or the Banos min Abanos, or the Banim min Abanos. So if they stole again, if they took too much, that the sons took, they were only sons, and they stole about Yerusha, and they took too much. The older ones took too much. So again, so you divide it again, take away from them, and Banos min Abanos again, if they're all Yarshining, and some of the older daughters took too much, so you give it to the younger daughters also. Well, the Banim min Banos, that means again that the daughters took too much for their Mazonos, so you take it away from them and give it to the sons.
That's when there's enough.
What will be the case over here? Min Banos, if Nechasim Shein Lamachrayis, I'll get this, something's wrong over here. Because if there's no, I didn't realize when I prepared that here, if it's Nechasim Shein Lamachrayis, they're not supposed to be getting any Mazonos. So what does it mean that you're taking away from the daughters to give to the sons? Because they're not supposed to get it. They weren't supposed to have gotten it, maybe. Well, this is the main point we want to get here now. That you don't take away from the sons the metaltalim in order to give the daughters mazonos, because they're not eligible to get mazonos from metaltalim. So if we shrink the whole issue, well, now it says a lot, but machlokes of Rebbe and Reb Shimon ben Elazar is if the daughters have a right to get mazonos from metaltalim. Rebbe says yes, and Reb Shimon ben Elazar says no. Now the Gemara comes to Paskin. Afagav the Kaimalan Alacha Rebbe Mechavero. Usually we Paskin like Rebbe against his opponent. If there's only a single opponent, it talks about Rebbe Mechavero. If there are many opponents, but you do Paskin like Rebbe against one opponent. So see here, according to the regular cloud, we should not Paskin like Rebbe that you do get Mizonos from a Talmud. Here we pass like Shimon Elazar. Rabbi says so that you don't get Mizonos from a Talmud like yesterday's Gemara. Yesterday's Gemara spoke about Rabbi Amnuna had a drasha to say that it's like a karka.
Nachman who argued against them and
there was somebody that wanted to pass, and he said, "No, I'm going to take away your own houses, your mansions, if you're going to do that." And everyone is leaning towards Rav Shimon ben Elazar that it's only from karka, not from a talmud. And this is quoted on top of the page. Rabbi said so that only karka not metaltalim. Our issue was mizonos. Here he says some other things also. He says ksuba and parnasa. Parnasa was the issue about the dowry that you give the daughters in order to get married. In order they should be able to get married. That was a question. Yesterday we said that Shmuel holds that is from metaltalim. But here Rabbi says no, even that is also only from karka. It's from mizonos, only from karka. Parnasa, only from karka. Here ksuba also. Ksuba seems to be to give the wife her ksuba also only from karka, not from metaltalim. That means it could be that even from the husband is alive, he doesn't have to give ksuba from his metaltalim, only from karka. That's the end of the Gemara. And it comes out that ksuba, mizonos, and parnasa only is collected from karka, not from metaltalim. If anybody remembers, under the ksuba, under the chuppah, you hear them reading the ksuba. It says afilu miglima dal kaspoy. That Chassan says, they writes in the ksuba that you can collect ksuba even from the shirt off my back. Miglima dal kaspoy. So shirt off the back means metaltalim. So it's not like this Gemara. This Gemara says that he only can collect from the ksuba is only collected from karka. So they bring down the takana sagaonim. Means in the Gemara it says only from karka. And you can't collect ksuba from the talmud only if the husband has a karka, if he's alive, if he divorces, or if he dies. But takana sagonim, they made that to collect from the talmud also. So what it says in our ksuba is only based on the takana, later takana after the Gemara, that the ksuba and mizonos is collected also from the talmud. They also bring down even balchov. Balchov also is only allowed to collect from karka. And they talked about they made a takana on that also to collect from a talmud also. I didn't go into it, but they bring it down this takana sagona, which used to be against it's not against the Gemara, it's a takana post the Gemara. Then after the Gemara, they made a takana that you could collect from talmud also. So even though the Gemara comes out on the zonos that it's only from karka, the halacha l'maisa is going to be from the talmud also. Ksuba also, that it says it's only from karka. Takana sagona is to be from a talmud. Parnas they talk about.
In terms of ksuba,
yes,
it doesn't matter if he doesn't have karka when he gets married, right? It's only when he dies or when he gets divorced.
Right. In the ksuba it says the kanina or the asran ala mikni. What I owned already and what I'm gonna own in the future. He writes that in the ksuba. And our ksuba, when we read it under the chuppah, you listen what they read. What I own and what I'm going to own. With the asran ala mikni. What I'm going
because
to.
I mean nowadays it seems like most chasans wouldn't own any karka.
Right.
I don't know. Back then, did they own karka? If it was part of the.
The Gemara says that. The Gemara says that a person should first build a house and then get married.
Well, build a house and then get married.
Okay.
Now we rent.
Maybe because the coin maybe is not the getter of Kesuvos.
It's not about. I don't think so. The question is not. No, I think it's a different issue. I don't think it's called Tosefes. That's not the Hagdara so much. That the halach would be that both the Ksuba and the Tosefes, what are you allowed to collect from? And the Gemara would say that only from Karka. And they made a takana. It could be that by money issues, there's not difficult to make a takana. They have to rest in Hefka, they can make takanas in money. They can make takanas in Yisurim also. They can make a takana. So they made a takana to collect also from a talmud. I don't know. I'm not answering what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it has to do with the point of Tosefes. It's a new takana, to be able to collect from, and the mazonas also, that the daughters get mazonas from metaltalim, even though in the din of the Gemara they wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised also if it has something to do with the situation that people don't have karka so much anymore, and maybe like you're saying, that people don't have karka as much as they used to. Maybe that's why they made it takana. I don't know the history. They bring it down from a Shviragon. There's something in the Shviragon wrote about a takana sagona. It's brought on later on. Somebody was trying to read it. Places mentions it a few times. Next Mishnah. The next Mishnah starts a series of Mishnahs that we're talking about. Even if he didn't write in the Ksuba, now our Ksuba has interesting nusach that we say some things that it doesn't say in the Gemara, and there are many things that it says that we don't write. And the Mishnah says, even if you don't write it, you're chayiv anyway. That's the main gist of the Mishnah is coming up now. That even if you didn't write this following takana, but you have to do it anyway because that's the Tanai Ksuba. And it says in our Mishnah three things. Well, let's read the Mishnah Pashup Shat, and then we'll go to the Gemara. The Gemara looks at it a little different. Lo kasav ksuba. He didn't give her a ksuba. He didn't write a ksuba at all. Is the ksuba only obligating if he gives her a piece of paper? The document he's mechayiv himself. If he didn't give her a ksuba. Married her, they're not giving her a ksuba.
Is the ksuba the star?
Yes.
That's one of the ways to get married.
No.
A star.
No.
That's
a star kedushin. Star kedushin. Isha nikna is b'shloshet rochim because of star b'via. Star b'via means a star that reads harayat b'kudeshasli b'star zu.
I see.
That's different star.
That's not the ksuba.
That's not ksuba. The ksuba says that the chassan.
The obligations.
The
Right.
I'm going to.
He's still up.
Right. That's what it says. That even though he didn't write, and the ksuba says that if I'm going to divorce, I'm going to die. So there's 200 zuz, and also there's tosefes and the dunya. They make additions also. But he didn't write it. He didn't give her a ksuba. So still, there's a ksuba anyway. The sula gova masayim mana. That if she's a basula when they got married, then eventually she's going to collect 200. Almana will collect 100. Why? Because it's a Tanai Bezdin, even if you don't write it. It's only out of the good, not only out of his goodwill that he decided to write a ksuba, and if he didn't, says no. It's a Tanai Bezdin, even if you don't write it. The next halacha, that lo kasav lo asad shabamon tachas masayim zuz, the lo kasav lo kol nechasam this the achron ksuba says. That really it should have been written that all of my estate is responsible, guaranteeing your ksuba. That a person, when he gets married, he's mechayiv himself 200 zuz, and all of his property is a guarantee for that payment. But he didn't do
like
that.
A quote.
What he should have written.
He
should call the chasem this the achron ksuba says. That's usually what he should have written. We don't write all these things, but that's what should have been written. And he didn't write it. He didn't write that all of my property are responsible for your ksuba. That means that you could collect from any ones of my property. He didn't write that. But still, it's still chayiv. Shoot tonight bezin. What did he write? He wrote a little different. He said that this field is going to be the guarantee for your ksuba, and it happens to be that it only was worth 100 zuz. He has to give 200 zuz. So that doesn't make a difference. All his nechasim are all of his property is a chayiv for the ksuba, even though he didn't write it. Even if he wrote the opposite, he wrote that only this field is going to be responsible for your ksuba. That doesn't change the halacha. Chayiv from all his nechasim. Sehu Tanai Bezdin. The same thing is going to be a Tanai Bezdin. That even if he didn't write it, even if he wrote differently, it doesn't change the law. It's still chayiv ksuba from all his nechasim. And the third thing is lo kasavla in tishtabo yafrikinach vasminach li'intu. He didn't write following nusach, which should have been in the ksuba, that if you're going to be captured, I'm going to redeem you and take you back for myself as a wife. That's the halacha that he's mechuyev to redeem her. That was kerkuna. And we said over there, Tachas Pegos.
What's Leinto?
Leinto was a wife, Aramaic. The reason why I'll take you back as a wife.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why the contracts are written in Aramaic is that should be understood. They use the vernacular. Nowadays it's opposite. Even if you know Hebrew, you don't know what Aramaic is. But the reason why they wrote all of these things in Aramaic is because they should make it in a language everyone understands what they're talking about. That's and now it comes out funny because even if you know Hebrew, you don't know what they're saying. But the words means if you're going, this is what I should have written to her. If you're going to be captured, I'm going to redeem you and take you back as a wife. But even English, they have nowadays. I think that they like more than modern. Maybe they write in Hebrew. They do write in Hebrew, even though it has the ksuba we write is a lot of it is in Aramaic. So they write in Hebrew. Some of them. But here the point is,
if she was captured, I'll take you back as a wife implies that she was raped against her will.
That's not the point.
That's not the point.
The point is that he has to redeem her.
Okay.
Are you happy with that?
I thought that when people were captured, there was a hazaka that they.
That's the problem about a Kohen. That's the problem about a Kohen. Could a Kohen take her back? But that's going to be in the parentheses, the next 3 words. But it's all part of the point that he has to redeem her as if she was raped or not. That he has to redeem her. She has to get ransomed out. So he's going to ransom her out.
You can't just go on with this life.
Right. And he says, and of course, Pidin Shvuyim, there's a whole fund, Pidin Shvuyim, they make it, and he says, no, we point him, you have to ransom her for your money.
I see.
So I'll skip the parentheses for a second. So even if he didn't write it, the same thing as three things in the Mishnah, that even if you didn't put it into the ksuba, you didn't give her ksuba at all, or you try to get out of being all your property should be responsible for the ksuba, or he didn't write that I'm going to redeem you if you're captured, he still has to. In between, the Mishnah writes that sometimes by a Kohen, they should have written differently. By a Kohenes, if he's a Kohen, Kohenes means here Ashes Kohen, that if he's a Kohen who's getting married, so the nusach of the Ksuba should have been, if you're going to be captured, I'm going to redeem you and bring you back to your hometown, because you can't take it back. This is what Rabbi Yaakov was talking about, that there's also a problem about rape, and it could be that she was raped, and there's a chash. A shvu is also to a Kohen, and if she was married to a Kohen, she got, but he still has to redeem her. He has to redeem her and bring her back safely to her home, to her father's home, and he can't stay with her anymore. But he still has a chiv to redeem her. Even though he didn't write it, still is chai because that's a Tanakh business. That's the main gist of the Mishnah. That even though he didn't write these things now, the Mishnah is going to go further. Not now, but later on they're going to be more mishnayos. Other things that he didn't write, he's obligated. Even so, even though he didn't write it, he's still obligated. Before we go further, the Mishnah says takes a stop on the halacha of a shvui over here. We said here halacha that a shvui has to be redeemed. So the question is, what if he wants to give her a divorce now? Can he divorce her right now and say, I'm not going to redeem her? So it says, Nishbus chayv l'vdos. If she was captured, he's chayv to redeem her. I'm going to give her a get now, and I'll pay ksuba. And now she has money, and let her be paid herself. No, he's not allowed to do that. Any Rasha, he's not allowed to divorce her now, even though he'll be giving her ksuba. His husband usually can divorce anytime he wants to, and if he gives ksuba. But here, that once she was captured, so that makes him obligated to redeem her, and he can't say, I'm giving her the get now. He can give her a get, but you have to be paid her. You must redeem her. You can't get out of redeeming her by giving her a get and the ksuba. Even if the ksuba is enough money, no difference if it's enough money or not. He has an obligation to redeem her from the time that she was captured, and he can't give her a get in order to get out of that responsibility. On the contrary,
in other words, he saved money because it would come out of the ketubah. Right. So I'll give you a get, I'll pay your ketubah. But because if he wants to divorce her anyway, he still has to redeem her first.
Right. How about there's a contrast case over here, just to show the contrast. Luxa, if a woman gets sick, a wife gets sick, he has to heal her. We didn't have this yet. We didn't have this obligation. We didn't have it. It's going to be included in mazonas. The same person has to give her food if she's sick and she needs all kinds of medicines and treatments. So that's also included in mazonas, and he has to heal her. How about he wants to give her a get now with the ksuba, and then she's on her own. So here he is allowed to. Because here the point is that it's like mazonas. Let's say he divorces her. He fed her today, and now he divorces her. He's not going to feed her tomorrow. The reason that he has to heal her is because that's like the mazonas. So, of course, whatever she needs for today's remedy, till he divorces her, he has to give her. But tomorrow's remedy is tomorrow's issue. So he doesn't have to give her forever. So he would be allowed to divorce her, and then she gets ksuba, of course, and then there's no chiv to continue. By the shvuya, by the redeeming, that's something that happens. It's a one-time thing, that when she gets captured, he has to redeem her, and that's already took effect at the time that she was captured. So he can't say, I'm going to give her a gift. First redeem her. But if there's an issue about giving her remedies and trufot, medicines, and tipulim, so as long as he's married to her, he has to do that. But once he divorces her, so then he doesn't have to. If he wants to, yes.
No, if she needs, let's say, an operation, and he knew already before he wanted.
That probably, yes. Yeah, that would be a nice case. I didn't think of it. That if she got sick in the way that she needs an operation.
She cost $80,000 for kidney transplant.
And he's mukhayid. So that's not called mazonos. And then he wouldn't be able to divorce her. Then he'd have to take care of that. I think that he's chayv right away. It could be. I don't know how you look at the remedy. It means day by day. He has to do with day by day whatever she needs day by day. But he doesn't have to continue forever. So day by day, whatever she needs today, I'll give her for today. If she needs an operation today, if she needs it right now, then maybe I don't know exactly how you look at it.
It could be very relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
But if she got sick with something like that, then you have to find a donor and all that kind of stuff. It could take time. So whatever it is today, I don't see how he'd have to pay for the excess.
Because he just has to pay for today.
Yeah.
And today, whatever she needs for today, I have to give today. If
Maybe
today she needs
to do the research or something.
Whatever, until he divorces her, he has to give her. The way Rashi says is that this is defined as mazonos. Same way he has to give her food. So her food is expensive. That usually let's give a loaf of bread, and she has to have medicines. So that's mazonos. That's the way, and all the treatments. It's all mazonos. It's all upkeep. So that upkeep is defined day by day. And if she has to have some big mazonos, so today I have to give her. Tomorrow he wouldn't have to. He'd be allowed to divorce her and he wouldn't have to give her. He's not mechayiv himself for all those days. So in operation and stuff, I don't know the answer. Okay, so back to the Mishnah. I had three cases over there. The first one was he said no kasav lo ksuba. The Gemara starts. Rashi and Tosfos explain that the Gemara starts that when it says he didn't give her a ksuba, you can look at it two ways. Does it mean that he just didn't write a ksuba, or that he told her, I don't want to give you a ksuba, and she is mochel? Is the case of the Mishnah that she was mochel or not? When it says that even though he didn't write it, he has to give it anyway, is it because he forgot, or that she was mochel? He forgot or he didn't do it. But is it a point? Is it a point of being mochel? Is there such a thing that she can be mochel the ksuba? So the Gemara is going to go into that subject. The Mishnah later on, and the Gemara is going to try to figure out what our Mishnah holds. So the Gemara starts. Mani, first white line. Mani Reb Meiri. Our Mishnah, the Gemara assumes that our Mishnah means that even if she was mochel, it doesn't work. And even though he didn't write her a ksuba, and he told her, I'm not giving you a ksuba. You want to get married? She says yes. And the Mishnah says still he has to give her ksuba. If so, that means that she can't waive the ksuba. Even if she was mochel, it doesn't help. She still has to give her ksuba.
What happened?
He told her, I want to marry you if you're a mochel with a ksuba. I want to marry you without the obligation of a ksuba. You agree? And she says yes.
And what's the,
so this machlokes coming up. But Mary says it doesn't happen. It can't happen. He's obligated anyway. Yehuda says he could. And
because it has to do with if it's a Tanai, right? Based in whatever we call it.
Maybe it's a Tanai Bezdin, but the question is, could she be mochel that? Could she waive that right? Is her rights? Bezdin made a Tanai Bezdin for her right, but she can waive it maybe. Right. So in our Mishnah, you can't tell exactly what the Mishnah means. The Gemara assumes that it means even if she waives the right, he's still chayiv. She can waive it. She's going to be our man.
The way the Mishnah reads, we think it's all for benefit. Like that.
But she waives it. She says, I want to get married. He doesn't want to give me a ksuba.
It doesn't look like it's going to be waiving anything.
Okay. But the Gemara,
he's trying to get out of something, and the Mishnah is saying he can't get out of it.
And why
so it sound like he's she's waiving.
Okay, good. That's what the Gemara is going to say then as a possibility. But the Gemara first looks at it that she knows what he's doing. He's not writing a ksuba, and she says, okay, I'll get married anyway. That means that she was mochel. And still it doesn't work.
Today have some people, they write prenuptial. So
prenuptial probably doesn't say there's no ksuba. It probably just means that
if you get divorced, then you're not getting half my money.
Right. And that's there's never such a law she should get half the money. Why should she get half the money? That's a new invention. That's not ksuba. So the new invention, so they make a prenuptial on the invention. But here we're talking about ksuba. So probably the prenuptial does not mean that there's no ksuba. I imagine. I don't know the law over here. We're going to say here, maybe there's a little letter over here that it can't be without a ksuba, because the Chazal want that it shouldn't be so easy to divorce. He should have to have some sacrifice divorcing. So, Mani Rav Meir, the Mishnah must be Rav Meir. The Amar Kol HaBrochos LePsula Min Masayim Ula Mana Mana Areza Bilas Los. If someone does not give a ksuba to a basula 200 and a mana and to a widow mana, so it's like it's not a good marriage. The marriage doesn't take effect. It means it has to be a ksuba, and even if she waives it, it's not waived.
Because it's too much like a keris or something. We're saying why does it have to have money involved?
The Gemara says usually the ksuba is in order that it shouldn't be easy for him to divorce her. It shouldn't be easy to divorce.
Okay.
And here Meir says he doesn't have the right to waive it. So Amisha that says that she cannot waive it is Rav Meir. The Rav Yehuda Amar wrote a kosev l'psula shtar shel masayim v'ikosev eskabati me'mocha mana. Ula mana v'ikosev eskabati me'mocha chamishim zuz. Rav Yehuda holds that a woman could waive her ksuba. He gives an example about waiving part of the ksuba. It seems that he can waive the whole ksuba also. I'm not sure why it says here only a partial. It says here that he wants to, he could write for a ksuba 200, and she writes him a receipt. I got already 100, which is another way of saying that she waives 100. Or amana, that he gives her a ksuba of 100, and she says a receipt that I got 50 already. The she could say I got the whole thing also. I think. Let's see later on. The Hidden Gemara seems to take it. Where's the Gemara later on? Nundal. It's coming in a couple of pages. We'll have it. So I don't know what it says over there. But it seems the Gemara seems to say that there's a machlokes if the woman could be mochel her ksuba. But Meir says not. The Yehuda says yes. And our Mishnah, the Gemara seems to be like a Meir. That our Mishnah says if he didn't write a ksuba, it's still chayiv. That sounds like a Meir that he cannot be mochel the ksuba. Fine. The Gemara has no problem with that. Our Mishnah is Rav Meir. Mani Rav Meir. So far the Gemara starts Mani Rav Meir. That's okay. But the Gemara is a kasha. Ein b'seifa. Because in the next part of the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to see that it's also machlokes, and it's not going to be according to Rav Meir. Kasav l'asad ha'shav amona tachas mosayim zuz v'lo kasav l'kol nechasim disli achron l'ksuba seich chayiv shu t'nai bezin. That's the second part of the Mishnah. The second din of the Mishnah, this was this one. Kasav l'asad ha'shav even if he wrote that this field is designated to pay your ksuba and only happens to be worth 100, everything, his whole estate is meshubed. He's supposed to write kol nechasim this liachon ksuba sech, and even if he didn't write it, he's still chayiv, because that's the Tanai Bezin, that a person's all his nechasim are obligated to. The Gemara goes to another subject which the Gemara puts all together, and that's a question about the achrayus that goes if he sells it. It means our Mishnah doesn't really talk about beferish about if he sells the property. He got married and then he sells the property. So could the woman go to collect from the buyers? Is there a lien on it? And the Gemara goes into the subject about a lien, and it puts it all together, the same issue about the properties that he has or the properties that he sells. Is it all a lien onto the ksuba? So there's a question in general. If someone writes a contract, some kind of eschayvus, a loan, a sale, whatever it might be, and they didn't write in it that I give a guarantee. Usually there'd be written in the ksuba, in the star, any kind of a star. This is not do ksubas anymore. The Gemara is going to talk about a machlokas, nothing to do with ksuba, it has to do with any kind of a document. That someone borrows money and his fields are, his property is a lien on it now for that loan. And so then the lender could go to the buyer and say that you bought a property with there's a lien on it. I have a lien on the property because I lent him $100,000 and he sold you the property. I'm collecting the property. I'm with the Balchov. I have a right to collect the sum. So they didn't usually write it in the contract. Right in the contract that all my property is the shubit. There's a lien on all my properties towards this debt, and if I sell it, so you have a right to collect from the buyers. But they didn't write it. They didn't write the achrayus. They didn't write this guarantee into the contract. Mm-hmm. So does it take effect or not? Does the achrayus take effect, even though he didn't write it? It's unwritten. Does it have, even though it's unwritten, does the lender have a right to collect the properties from the buyer, the one who bought the fields from the borrower? What?
I thought not.
Because if it says it, it says it. If it doesn't say it, it doesn't say it.
Yeah, and also I thought we wanted a call to go out, but we wanted people to know.
Well, we know the contract. It says in the contract that there's a loan. That much it does say. It says in the contract that Ruben borrowed $100,000.
So the guy that wants to buy the field, he doesn't know anything about it on price.
He knows about the loan. He heard about the loan. He knows that there's $100,000 loan on this guy, and now he wants to sell the field. So I know that it's possible that the lender is going to come collect. Okay. So that's the question. So the way the Gemara talks about it is, was it a mistake that they forgot that they left it out? And that's called Tar Sofer, that it's a scribe's mistake. If it doesn't say it, it's so taken for granted that they surely meant to write a price. Who's going to borrow money? Who's going to lend money without getting a price? So if they didn't write it, it must be that it was just a Sofer's mistake. Mm-hmm. And that's the way of saying that it does take effect. And he can go, the lender could go to the buyer and say, you bought a field that I have a lien on it. So that's machlokas of Yehuda Meir. The terminology is going to be achrayus tel sofer or not. Is the achrayus, the fact that it doesn't say achrayus, is it a scribe's mistake? So the Gemara goes into machlokas. Asam Rabbi Yehuda, the achrayus tel sofer. Who? The Rabbi Meir, achrayus lav tel sofer. That's machlokas of Yehuda Meir. Nothing to do with ksubas. That's to do with any kind of contract. That Rabbi Meir holds that Rabbi Yehuda holds, if you left it out, it's only the scribe's mistake and it takes effect anyway. And Rabbi Meir says, no, it's not a mistake. And if he didn't write it, there's no achrayus. So in our Mishnah, that it says that even though he didn't write it, that all my property is meshubed to your ksuba, he still is meshubed. It is meshubed. That sounds like Rabbi Yehuda's way of talking. That achrayus tel sofer. If you didn't write it or you wrote it differently, it's still for sure going to be a achrayus.
We're talking about the sada that was worth 100, aren't we?
Right, but no difference. The Gemara doesn't see a difference. That if 100, that even the rest of the fields are also meshubed, and even if he sells it, it's also meshubed. The Gemara doesn't differentiate. Okay. Both, I would see that's. I would think it's different. The Gemara doesn't see a difference. That to say that only part of my fields are meshubed to pay the loan, or to say that if I sell it, you could collect from the buyer. The Gemara sees it all the package deal. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you don't write all the achrayus, it's for sure a mistake, and the achrayus is still in effect, both from the rest of the fields and also if you sell it, that the woman will be able to go back to the buyers and say, I have a lien on this property. And the fact that the Mishnah says that you could collect from all fields, that sounds like Rabbi Yehuda is talking that achrayus tel sofer. And therefore the Gemara is going to be bothered that we don't see a consistency in the first two halachas. The first halacha seems Rabbi Yehuda, but Meir would argue. So we don't have consistency in the first two halachas.
It seems like Rabbi Meir is leaning towards the woman being able to mocha her rights.
In the first halacha, he says she cannot. The first halacha Meir says he cannot. The Rameh is the one who says this halacha, that you cannot waive the ksuba. You get ksuba. You can't waive the ksuba. That was the first time. That's the one started off. Mani Rav Meir that says if you can't do a ksuba less than 200, so the beginning of the mission sounds like a mayor, but then the second halacha that says about you cannot waive. If you didn't write the achrayis, it's achrayis anyway. That's Rabbi Yehuda talking. That achrayis tal sofer. According to Rabbi Meir, he will say achrayis lav tal sofer. It seems Rabbi Meir himself, even though he makes ksuba very strong, he doesn't say that ksuba is very strong. That even though usually you could waive achrayis, here you can't waive achrayis. The Gemara doesn't say that. I would have thought so. I would have thought the Gemara would have said that this is like every kind of ksuba, like all the other things, you can't waive it. So this also you can't waive that, even if you wanted to waive, not like a regular achrayis lav tal sofer. You didn't make a mistake, but even though you didn't make a mistake. But the Gemara doesn't say that. And the Gemara is asking that the first part of the Mishnah seems to be only Rav Meir, the second part of the Mishnah seems to be only Rabbi Yehuda. And now the Gemara is going to bring down the Tanan. The bottom line, the Gemara is going to prove this machlokas in general, nothing to do with ksubas. In general, about a shtar chol, if there's no achrayis, do we say that it's a mistake and really there's achrayis, or wasn't a mistake and there's no achrayis? The Tanan, what's a shtar chol? A person found a document that's a loan document. He found it, a third party, not the lender, not the borrower. You found a shtar that says Reuben owes Shimon $100,000. Im yesh lahen achrayis lo yachzeh. Trusting Yachzeh she'en bezin nefanahem. The Rav says now the case over here is that the lender, the borrower, both of them agree that this was the shtar that I lost, and the borrower says I didn't pay it back yet. The lender wants his contract back. Someone finds the contract. It says Reuben borrowed from Shimon, and he wants to give the contract back to Shimon. He asks Reuben, it's okay? He says, yeah, I didn't borrow, I didn't pay back the money. It belongs to Shimon. He lost the contract, then and give it back then. So Meir says that's okay if it only is relevant to Reuben and Shimon. If Reuben and Shimon are the only ones who are relevant in this issue, because Reuben's the one who wrote, Shimon's the one who lent, and both of them say that it wasn't paid back yet, so fine. But if there's a achrayis nechasim, if there's involves somebody else, it involves a third party, it involves also the one who bought the property of the borrower. So then it might affect him because they're going to come and collect with this contract, and the borrower has no money, so he's going to go collect from the lien on the mortgage property, and maybe it was really paid up. So if it says in the contract that there's achrayis, so then don't give back the contract to the lender, because the person is going to collect, and maybe they're collecting shlokadin, maybe really it was paid up already. The loba says it wasn't paid up. Maybe it's a trick. Maybe it was paid up, and they just want to be able to collect from the
based in the front. What does that mean?
In the case of ein ben achrayis nechasim, if in the contract doesn't have any guarantee, so then it's no problem. Give it back to the lender, because anyway, Bez is not going to collect from anybody. That means Rameir says achrayis lav to sofer. If it doesn't have achrayis in the contract, it means there is no achrayis, and you're not going to be able to collect. But the Chachamim moment, which can be Rabbi Yehuda, even if it has no achrayis nechasim in the contract, also don't give it back. Shebezin the front of him, because Bezin will collect from the nechasim mishubadim, even if it doesn't say it, because this Amadama holds that achrayis tal sofer. If it doesn't say it in the contract, it's only the scribe's mistake. Nobody would have lent money without a guarantee of the estate of the property. So here, machlokes between Rav Meir and the Chachamim will be, it happens to be Rabbi Yehuda, if achrayis tal sofer. And that means our Mishnah, the Gemara sees in our Mishnah that says that all of the person's estate is obligated to pay the ksuba, goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, that achrayis tal sofer. And the Gemara is a contradiction now. Reisha Rav Meir, Sefer Rabbi Yehuda. Reisha Meir, Sefer Rabbi Yehuda. That's the most problem. How could he be in our Mishnah that the first halacha only fits with Rav Meir and the second halacha only fits with Rav Yehuda? There's an easy way to answer the Mishnah. Easy way would be that Rav Meir says ksuba is different. The same way the whole Mishnah says. Rav Meir said before that ksuba has more severity. We want to make sure that nobody can waive anything, even though usually you could waive achrayis. Maybe here you can't waive achrayis. That would be the simple shot. But the Gemara is going to prove from the Brisa that there's no such thing. You can't waive. The ksuba is not more common than anything else. Rav Meir who says you can waive achrayis, he also can waive achrayis by ksuba also. Umi Shani way, does Rav Meir hold this difference between ksuba and anything else? But Tanya, the Gemara is going to bring a brisa which has a couple of issues which we don't have to go into all of them. It's going to say over here, Hamisha Govin Chamisha govim and mechubarin. And one of them is going to be Kesuvos isha she'ein ben achrayis. That's what we want. And we're going to say, we'll read everything, but really that's all we want. That the following, and it's going to be Rav Meir talking. Rav Meir is going to say that you only could collect from the B'nei Choron. B'nei Choron means the property of the husband before he sells it. Once he sells it, that's called Mishabadim. You're coming to collect it because there's a lien on it. B'nei Choron means before he sells it. And here it says that there are 5 cases that only collect from Mishul Choron and not from B'nei Choron, and not from Mishabadim. And Rav Meir is going to say that Kesuvos is not different than anything else. Kesuvos also, if this doesn't have Rachlais in it, you can't collect. And that's going to be Mars Kasha. The second halach of the Mishnah only goes according to Yehuda, not according to Rav Meir.
What you're saying, B'nei Chorin?
B'nei Chorin is the property which was not yet sold. Free property. What does free property mean? That it's still by it's still by the borrower. He hasn't sold it. It's
the Mechorin here with 2
Mechorin means like Chorin, B'nei Chorin. Mechorin means freed up property. Freed up property. He's not freed about it, that it wasn't sold. The opposite of Mechorin means Mishubadim, once it was sold, and then you want to come because it has a lien on it. While it's by the original borrower, or here the husband, so then it's not because of Mishubadim, not because of the lien, it's because he has property. So here, these 5 things can only be collected from the property before they're sold. Once they're sold, you can't collect. So some of these things are a little complicated. Peiros, Shvach Peiros, the third one is Makabala of Lozan as Ben Ishto, Bas Ishto. The fourth one is Get Chov Shein Chrayis. And the fifth one is Kesuvos isha she'ein ben achrayis. I think we could skip, for our purpose, I think we could skip the first 2. It's a little bit detailed, but I think we can skip it for now. Hamakabala of Lozan as Ben Ishto, Bas Ishto. If somebody steps upon himself to support his wife's children, his wife's son, his wife's daughter. When someone gets married, he has an obligation. He only has an obligation to support his wife and to support his own children. Even that he has an obligation. But he doesn't have to support his wife's children. But he accepts upon himself. So that's only from B'nei Choron, not from Mishubadim. Means if he had property that he sold after he gets married, then he sells property. So then he can't go to the buyer and say that this is a lien on it for the
stepchildren.
Right. He hasn't. That's not included. Well, we won't go into the reasons of all these things. But get chov she'ein ben achrayis, that's our subject. But a regular get chov means a regular shtar chov. The word get, even though nowadays get is only used as a divorce, the word get just means a shtar, means a document. A get chov means a document of debt that doesn't have achrayis. This is the mandama that says that achrayis lavta sofer. That if you didn't write achrayis, so there is no achrayis. That's what Meir talking. And then it says Kesuvos also says the same thing. Kesuvos isha she'ein ben achrayis. That also ksuba that doesn't have achrayis written in it is no achrayis. So what does it say here? That even according to Rav Meir, you don't say that something special about ksuba. Who's the author who says that achrayis is not a mistake? That means if you didn't write it, there's no achrayis. Rav Meir, and it says even a ksuba, v'katani Kesuvos isha. So you see that Rav Meir holds that even by ksuba, there's no. If you don't write achrayis, there's no achrayis. What's the Gemara's kasha? That the second din of our Mishnah doesn't seem to fit with Rav Meir. The first din of the Mishnah, that you can't waive ksuba, is after Rav Meir. Rav Meir holds you could waive ksuba. And the second halacha, that if you didn't write ksuba, if you didn't write achrayis, there still is achrayis, is only according to Yehuda, according to Rav Meir. If you didn't write achrayis, there is no achrayis. That's the Gemara's kasha. The first 2 halachas are not consistent. The first one is only Rav Meir, the second one is only Rav Yehuda. The Gemara answers, Iboy same Rav Meir, Iboy same Rav Yehuda. I can explain the Mishnah both ways. If you want, I could say Rav Yehuda, that the Mishnah is Rav Yehuda. And the question was that the first part of the Mishnah seems to only Rav Meir. This was like Yaakov's teretz, that you don't see in the Mishnah that she waived it. It doesn't say she waived it. It just says that he didn't write ksuba. It doesn't say openly that she accepted that, okay, don't give me ksuba, I'll get married anyway. It doesn't say she was mocha. Over there, she says, iskabalti, it's as if I received it. She means she openly waived the ksuba. She said, I don't need the ksuba. 100 is enough, or 50 is enough, or nothing's enough. Over there, if she said so, Yehuda holds that she waived it. But in our Mishnah, it doesn't say that. So back to the beginning of the Mishnah, you can learn the whole Mishnah of Yehuda. And even though it says that if you didn't write the ksuba, he's still obligated, but that's provided that she wasn't mochel. But if she was mochel, then she could be mochel. The Mishnah doesn't say if she was mochel or not. The Gemara assumed that even if she was mochel, and that's why it only be Rav Meir. But the Gemara says not necessarily. You can learn the Mishnah that she was not mochel.
Okay.
And the whole Mishnah is of Yehuda. Second teretz, Iboy Seima, Rabbi Meir. You fill in the Mishnah of Meir, and the Mishnah seems to say that there's no achrayis. There's achrayis. That if you didn't write achrayis, there still is achrayis. My chayiv ditani minam mechurorin. That we misunderstood the Mishnah. We thought that the Mishnah says that the Zacharias that it means even if it's going to be sold. It doesn't say that. It just says that even if you designated one field, it doesn't go in that one field. It goes in all the fields. But that doesn't mean that if it's sold that you can have a right to collect. But Meir says you don't have a right to collect. It means this was maybe like the Gemara fooled us, so to speak. That or the Gemara thought it all goes together, and it doesn't go together. The fact that designating one field doesn't stop that Achrais is on the rest of the fields. That's one point. There's nothing to do with the fact about selling the fields. If you have a lien on it that you're allowed to collect from the buyer, that's a different subject. Achrais that we spoke about has the same word Achrais, but it doesn't. It's two different things. One is Achrais means that the responsibility for the rest, the guarantee that the rest of all of my fields are going to pay the loan, but that's only as long as I own it. But if I sell it, that's a different halacha. Is the buyer also going to have to give back the lien? Is there a lien on it? Is it mortgaged in a way that they're going to be able to foreclose on it? That it doesn't say. The Gemara thought that according to our Mishnah includes that if you sell it, it's also meshubed and you could collect. That doesn't say. It just says that there's a lien on all the fields, not only one that they designated. Okay, as long as I own it, as long as I didn't sell it. So there's no contradiction. According to the Mishnah order of Meir, the first halacha says that you cannot waive, even if you learn another way. That you could say that the Mishnah is saying that you cannot waive, the woman cannot waive the ksuba, and even if she waived it, it's not waived. And the second halacha is saying that even if he designated one field, it goes on all the fields as long as he owns it. Once he sells it, there's no requirements. So we do have machlokas of Meir and Rabbi Yehuda in these two issues. Means we can, besides explaining who's our Mishnah, that's a nice thing to talk about. You have to have a consistent Mishnah. But just to point out, two machlokas came up. One is about can the woman waive the ksuba or not? You see it in our Mishnah, maybe yes, maybe not. But there is such a machlokas coming up. If a woman can waive the ksuba, I don't need a ksuba. I'll get married without a ksuba. Rabbi Meir says no. Who says yes, and that's true. All documents, including ksuba. If you did not write that there's going to be a lien on these fields, then if you sell it, the Baal Chol will have the right to collect it. You didn't write it. Did we say that was a mistake that you didn't write it? It's the scribe's mistake, and is Achrais or not? Rabbi says Achrais does so far, and there is a lien on the fields even if you didn't write it. Rabbi says not. Even like ksuba, if you didn't write that there's a lien on the buyer, so then there is no lien. Next thing's about Shvuya. And the Mishnah said that a husband is responsible to redeem his wife if she was captured. He has to ransom her. If she's an Eishes Yisrael, he can marry her back. He has to marry her.
So he didn't write that he will redeem her.
Right. Still, he has to redeem her. And what does he usually write? That I'll redeem you and marry you back. Take you back for a wife. And if he's a Kohen, then he writes that I'll take you back home. I'll redeem you and take you back home. I can't marry you anymore. I can't stay married because I'm a Kohen. If you get captured, I won't be able to stay married. But I'm going to redeem you, bring you back home. It's not the halachas of Shvuya now, which we could have had in the second paragraph. We spoke about the halacha about being captured. But we know the whole time that even if she was Nansa, a Kohen cannot stay with his wife when she was nivelot. But Yisrael could, as long as it wasn't berutzam, as long as she didn't willingly have relations with somebody. So then the husband can stay married to her. But now Abu Shmuel says a huge chiddush. I'm Abu Shmuel. Eishes Yisrael Shenensa. Asur l'bayla. That's how much earthquake. That a wife of a Yisrael that was raped is also to her husband. Now that can't be. How can that be? You know, the halach is that even if she was raped, she's still mutter. Only a Kohen cannot stay with the wife. But only Eishes Yisrael is mutter only if she was berutzam. So he says the huge chiddush, even though in the beginning she was raped, but during the actual bia, she got her hormones started working, and she's willing, and that's why she's asked it to the husband, because maybe the end of the bia was already biratzon. Even though the beginning was honest, maybe she got the desire, and while she was being raped, she decided that she is happy about it. And it's a chashash, we don't know for sure, but it's a chashash. And because of that chashash, we say that Eishes Yisrael is also to her husband, even if Father Shmuel said so. The Mazakasha, Eisvei Rav, Lavu Shmuel, Rav has the kasha on him. It says from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that if a woman was raped, he does take her back. Only if she's Eishes Kohen. Right? That's what it says. That he says, if you're going to be captured, I'll take you back. I'll redeem you and take you back. If you're Eishes Kohen, I'll redeem you and send you home. So doesn't it perish that a husband would be allowed to live with her again? It says, it says that if you're going to be captured. I'm going to be and take it back for a wife. According to Bush, you won't be able to take it back for a wife. Ishtik.
You got to flee the into.
The into, right? Into was a wife, right? If you look in the Ksuba, and in your Ksuba, you'll find the word into over there.
Okay.
It says that the husband says,
for a wife, his wife.
Into, be for me a wife. The word into means a wife.
What's the verb?
Into, that's how you say it. The into, that's the word. Into is a wife. Isha, I'll take you back as a wife. Into is a wife.
Okay, I will take you to me as a wife. For a wife.
So it says in the Mishnah that Eishis Israel, who was captured, then what you Abu Shmuel, you shouldn't be allowed to take it back because maybe the end was Beratzon. Ishtik. Abu Shmuel. That's the kasha. What?
Ishtik, so that's the end of that.
The more continues. Ishtik means you didn't have an answer. It's quiet. Then Rab said, I asked the kasha, but why were you quiet? You could have said it there. Kari Rab laid Abu Shmuel, Saram Atzruba Milim, Vechaf Yasim Olafihem. Rab said the pasuk in Eov about the father of Shmuel. The pasuk says over there, Eov was talking about that people were so scared of him. He was so revered that when he would say something, everybody would be quiet. He was talking about the good old days. Eov was saying, now people are making fun of me. The kids laugh at me. Once upon a time, when I would say something, everybody would be quiet. Even officials, they would stop talking and they would put their hand to their mouth. That's the pasuk in Eov. And now Rav was saying that about Abu Shmuel. Like I asked the kasha and he became quiet. You could have answered it. You could have answered. You could have said, what could he have said? Just because it says here that a shvuya, a captured woman is mother, a shvuya, as we know, is not for sure that she was raped. There's a chash that she was raped. It's not for sure. So it's not a kasha. If it says that if a woman was captured and she's not to go back to her husband, it's not a kasha in Abu Shmuel. Abu Shmuel said if you're sure she was raped, so then at the end of it, she was agreed. And she's also to her husband. But that's not a reason to say every shvu is going to be also because like a double chash. Maybe she was raped and maybe she became beratzon. But that's not a kasha.
Teach the boy means
which word?
What thing that Abu Shmuel said at the beginning?
He said Eishis Yisrael Jenensa Asur L'Bayla in the blue. Eishis Yisrael Jenensa Asur L'Bayla. That's what he said. If a wife of Yisrael was raped, she's also to her husband.
Uh-huh.
And here the Mishnah talks about if someone was captured, she's mutter to her husband. Yes, because it's not for sure that she was raped. And even if she was raped, we're not sure that it was the Ratzon at the end. It's like a double reason. But that's not a kasha on someone and
two chashash.
Right, like something like that. The whole thing, you can even say that the whole chash that she was raped. You don't know she was raped. But if she was for sure raped, Abu Shmuel would still say he could have answered that.
We're talking about rape, dafka.
Right, not for chash rape. So that's so we still have Abu Shmuel still on board, even though he himself didn't find an answer, but he still is on board. The Master Kasha with Abu Shmuel there's a fresh drush coming up soon that a woman is mutter. If she was an answer, if the woman was raped, she's mutter to her husband Israel. It's gonna be a drush by Sota. Over there we're going to say she was not raped, but if she would have been raped as mutter, the Torah says farish that farish and Russia, farish and deal that Eishis Yisrael Shenan says mutter. So according to Abu Shmuel, when is the case? What's going to be the case that she's mutter every time? Always should be choshesh that she agreed at the end. At the end, so the more says, keep going to Amri Adam should suffer about self. If we have testimony that she was screaming the whole time till the end, she was screaming. So then we see that she wasn't agreeing. But if you don't have that Adus, you have to be choshesh. Maybe she agreed at the end. That was Abu Shmuel. Rav asked the kasha, Rav Shmuel said it's not such a kasha. And now the Gemara says Rav argues. The Rav argues in Abu Shmuel doesn't hold this chash that maybe she agreed at the end. And the Gemara is going to say why. Second wide line, a plea to the Rav. Rav argues. Abu Shmuel is arguing on Rav. Rav argues. Rav was later. Dama Rav called shit chilasa bonus for sofa b'ruatz and afilu he amaras tanichulo shel molin. He sachrata. In this case, maybe she agreed. Even if you have testimony that she did agree. That while she's being raped, she says, leave him alone. People come to help her out. And she says, leave him alone. She says, leave him alone. Yes, leave him alone. Because I'm going to hire him, means that she got so much into it that she would have hired him to have relations. Means that she got into it and she's taken over. So she's mamash b'ratzon. Not only Abu this case we would have said for sure she's asa. Abu Shmuel was machadish achshtash that we have to be choshesh she was b'ratzon. But this case we say for sure she's asa because we hear her saying that she wants. Still muteres. Why? My time of Yetzirah B'Shem. That's also called an onus. The fact that hormones started working, that's not her fault anymore. That now
Yetzer,
the Yetzer Hara got clothed on her, enveloped her, and that's not her fault. Means that's already not considered her fault. If she goes to do the
that's the way we hold today.
That's what we hold. That's what we hold. That if she was raped, and even if she has Rasan at the end, that doesn't mean for the next time. That's already her own owner, her own Rasan. It only means B'shas Ma'aseh during the actual rape. So even if she agrees at the end, that's not her fault. That's called an onus. But and therefore, Rabbi says extremely against Abu Shmuel. Abu Shmuel says maybe she was B'rasan. He says even if she was Baldai B'rasan at the end, also it's called an onus because she has no say in the matter. That's already the hormones working. That's not her. I'm translating the Yetzer as the hormones. That's my own shot. Okay. When you pass like Rav Tanikavasa the Rava, Vilon Uspasa Asura. That's the pasuk by Yesota. That it says that if she was Vilon Uspasa, it says that if she was not forced, the word Uspasa is to be seized. Tofei seized. We find with the sin in the Torah. So it says that she's Asa.
So we're saying this.
I'm going to
is forced.
Seized. It literally means seized, which means forced. That's the point. It says that she had relations with a man and she wasn't forced into it, and that's the case. That's Asura. But we could derive from that Tosa Mutaris. If she was seized, then she's mutter. And the Brisa goes on. There's another woman that even if she was not seized, she's also The rest of the Gemara now, the Gemara is going to get back into this a little bit, but that's Allah on this point that if the beginning was plus of onus for sofa, Brasan is considered an onus also. Tanidach, yeah, we have other drushes about this also. This is not relative to us now. We could even put this in parentheses. I think we'll see. Tanidach, we learned another Brisa also a similar drush on the pasuk. Bilon is pasa. This pasuk it says that she was not seized. That's why she's asura. On the pasa muteres. If she was seized, then she's permissible. This is a famous drasha. There's another woman, even if she was against her will, she's also asa. Who's that? That we know. Laisha's Cohen. Laisha's Cohen is asa. Even if she was raped, she's also asa to her husband. Another drasha, which Taisha says is only an asmachta because you don't need a pasuk for this. That we said so far that if she was not seized, she's asa because she's doing it willingly. If she was seized, she's mutter. There's another woman, even though she was not seized, it was not against her will, she's also mutter to her husband. What's the case? This is not really a case of lonis pasim muteris. The case was the whole thing was not real. She thought she was married. She thought she was married, and she was mazana with a husband with a man willingly. Either she
thought it was her husband, or she thought she was married to this man.
She thought she was married to somebody, and she was mazana with somebody else. And then it comes, so she should be also to her husband. But then it comes out that
there's three people here. I thought there were just two people.
Three people are men or women.
Two men. I thought there was one man and one woman. There are two men.
There are two men. Two men.
Her
and
husband.
a woman.
She really is married to someone.
She thought she was married. Let's go. She was married, and she was mazana. So she should not be allowed to go back to her husband anymore because she was mazana b'rotzah. But then it comes out she was not married to him. She was not married to the husband. For some reason, it was a mistake. There was a mistake over there. There was some mistake in the first marriage. Was not really a marriage. So we tell her that you're allowed to go marry now. You can go back to your first husband because he never was your husband. It's the first time now. You thought it was your husband, and you were mazana while you were married. You were mazana without being married. You were a pnuya while you're married, while you were mazana, and now you can go back to your husband because it was never your husband yet. Even if she has a child from that first husband, she could say, she could just leave and say, I don't want you because she's not really married. She's not married. It's a mistake. Don't do it without a marriage. She wasn't married. She wasn't married. She thought she was married, and then we tell her you're not married. You weren't married. You thought you were married. You weren't really married. So now you can go now marry that man because you weren't married to him yet. If you would have been married, you're not allowed to go back to him because you were mazana and you were married to him. But you were not married, and therefore you could go back. That goes without saying. Tosfos says it's an asmach that's not real rush over here because it goes without saying.
What, I'm sorry, from the Shafidu?
Shafilu b'no mokav, because even if she has a child, she not only was she married, she even had a child, and she's carrying the child
On her shoulder.
And now we tell her that's a kiddush tos, there's a mistake. So we tell her, you just go home. Usually the word mion is a certain formula. Mion usually means that she refuses. That's talking about a ketana that got married and she says, I want out. That's what usually mion means. And then once she becomes a gedola, she can't do mion anymore. This is a mion even after she has a child. It's a very it's a planned words really because it's not no connection at all. But mion usually means when the girl got married as a ketana and it's only kedushin drabanan, and she doesn't need a get. She just says, I want out. So she goes home. But that's only until she became a gedola. Once she became a gedola, then she becomes a kedushin daraisa. And it's only if she has a child already. She's mamash a gedola. She had relations after she was married. After she was a gedola, then she can't do mion anymore. There's a case of a woman doing mion even after she has a child. What's the case? If it was kedushin tos, the whole thing was a mistake. So even if she has a child, so she says, this whole thing was a mistake. I wasn't married to you. I have a child from you, but we're not married. And then she goes home. But yes.
The halach Allah.
She goes for herself. Like lech lecha me'atzacha halachasla. She goes for herself. She goes. New Gemara. Still having to do with the halacha b'shvuya. Do you say that it was b'rason or not? Amar Yehuda. Hani nashi the ganvu ganvi. Shayu le'gavrayu. Women that thieves robbers. They rob women. So they're mutter to their husbands. You consider it an onus. We consider them an onus. That they rob. It's similar to a captive. It's not a mamish captive in war, but the ganavim, they robbed a woman. And there's a chash that they raped. But it was rape. It was ratza. It was against it. Well, not a Kohen, but a Yisrael. They did not go back to the Yisrael because they were onus. It was rape. It was mutter. It mutter them to go back. The onus. What is the Shirayim? They're permitted to their husbands.
Oh.
There seemed there was a story over there that this happened. I don't know. They bring them bread while they're captured over there. While they're, I don't know the word is captured. While they're seized by these ganavim, so they bring them bread. The women bring bread to these ganavim. That sounds like they're happy to be there. The Gemara says no. They're only doing it because of fear. They might kill them, so that's why they're doing it. They're not happy that they're there. That doesn't show that they're in agreement. They hand them the arrows. Means while they're fighting, so then these women they also help them fight. They give them their arrows while they're. So also it sounds like they're on their side. No, also they're only doing it because they're scared of them. It doesn't show us any reason to say that they're doing it willfully. But even if they allow them to leave and they don't, then for sure they're rusty because that shows that they willingly stand. New point. People women that were captured by the government, their own government, not the captives by the foreign government. They're captured by their own government. The Gemara is going to say similar to Achashverosh, that he wanted the girls to have relations with. So they're considered captured by their own government. Are they considered against their will? All those girls that were taken by Achashverosh, such a scenario that the king he wants the girls. So is that considered against their will, or are they willing? Maybe they're going to come to queen. What do you say? So far it says Arain Kishvuim.
We know Esther thought it was
Esther was Esther. But all other girls, is it considered against their will? Or maybe they'll become the queen.
Sounds like this.
Maybe they'll be picked for the queen.
Sounds like you're not sure.
We normally say that it was they willed it, they wanted.
They did want. Here it says not. Here it says
when we said with David and Melech, compare the women wanted to go to Achashverosh, and that was like compared to the women that wanted to go to David and Melech.
I think it's the opposite. The Gemara says that David was smart and Achashverosh was not, because by Achashverosh they were looking. They took all the girls. So the fathers, which didn't think that their daughter was going to be picked. There's so many girls over there. My daughter's going to be picked. By David, they only looked for one girl. They looked only for one. So everyone was willing to show their daughter to the delegation that came, because maybe they'll take my daughter. But by Achashverosh, she took all the girls. So there, the fathers were hesitant because he'll have relations with my daughter, and then they're going to send him home. And what's going to be? So that the Gemara says that they were not happy. That's what the Gemara is saying over here, I think. Yes.
I'm talking
about, I don't know about, that Medrash says, they say, over there,
the king,
over there says
okay,
not like that. That Medrash says different. That medrash says
Russia,
differently.
but that's
That
okay.
medrash says differently. That medrash says that the fathers didn't want that daughter just to be taken for one time and then be part of the
All
harem.
I'm thinking is it puts them on a moral stand, which I don't think is fitting to them.
Okay, but let's keep talking more.
Okay.
If they're captured by their own government to have relations with the king, so they're considered captives and it's against their will. We can assume it's against their will. Rashi says the point is because they don't think they're going to be chosen.
So even besides Esther,
Right,
because
right.
you said because the fathers
Because they
were
don't think
worried
they're going to
that
be.
they're not going to choose mine.
Right.
He's gonna have
Probably
relations with
not
mine.
going to be the queen. So
Probably not going to be the queen.
So therefore, they're considered against their will.
Okay.
But Genuvei listos einan kishvuyin. If they're stolen by robbers, then they're not considered captives. That means they do it willingly. They might be willingly. We'll see it a little bit Gemara just to finish the Gemara. It makes it simple. But Tanya, the Brisa says the opposite. That if they're captured by their kingdoms, so then they are usher. They are usher. They're not like a Shevi. But by robbers, then it is Keshevi, and they're permissible. So it says the contradiction in Brises. The Gemara says, Malchus
They
and
don't
Malchus.
quote it, right?
What? They don't quote the Brises. It's the opposite.
Okay.
Shvuy Malchus is not Kishvuyin. Kunuvilistus is Kishvuyin. Malchus and Malchus Lakasha. How about Malchus Achashverosh? How about Malchus Ben Netzin? The Gemara says there's a big king like Achashverosh, a big king. Achashverosh is a big king. It's a big prestige to get married to him. So, is that the way to say it?
Isn't that
No,
so?
no. There's a king called Ben Netzer. That was his name, Ben Netzer. Somebody we don't know about him. He's not in Tanakh.
And he's considered a small.
He's considered a small king, but he's not even a king, maybe. So how does it go over here? This is Lokasha, but Ben Netzer will list them down. But Rashi explains that there are two extremes. There's somebody who's very prestigious, like a big king, but it's also a very small chance that she'll be chosen as the queen. On one hand, there's prestige, but on the other hand, there's a small chance she'll be chosen. That's the case of Achashverosh. That's his mutter, because she's probably not going to be chosen. There's the other extreme, that there's a Pasha Ganav, that's a nobody. And even though there's a good chance that he'll take her permanently, but she doesn't want to be with him. There's somebody in between, that he's prestigious enough. He's called some kind of prestige, and it's not such a difficult chance to be chosen by him. So there is a chashash that she did a biratzon. The two extremes, there's no chashash she did a biratzon, because by the big king, she's probably not going to be chosen. And by the small nobody, she doesn't want him. There's no prestige in being married to him. But somebody in between, that there is prestige in being married to him, and it's not such a far-off chance that she'll be chosen, because as a permanent wife, so she might have agreed. So that's how
We're not talking about listing.
that's also, it's called the listim. The most going to say right away, it can be called the listim also. It can be called the king, it can be called the
But
listim.
not the
The
small.
middle guy. The small guy is called the listim. A plain
Small guy.
listim.
Well, I thought we said listing that she might do it with its own.
Yeah, the Gemara didn't say that. Now the Gemara going to say the guy who's Rustim is this middle guy. This Ben Netzer is called a listim and a king. He's something in between. He's like the guy comes in. What do they call him? When he comes into the town and he comes, what's he called? The guy who comes into the town with a strong guy and he kills the sheriff and he takes over the town.
Oh, yeah.
So he's
in the West.
in the West. He comes in, he kills the sheriff and he becomes the guy. So that's a little bit prestige. He has a couple of counties that he's the king of over there, but he's still called a listing. He's still called a listing. So that's how Rashi explains. So listus Lakasha, have a list in the Alma. There's and the one says right away, listen, what is he? Is he a king or is he a listim? In Gabi Achashverosh, listim who? Gabi listim, the Alma Melachu. If you could compare him to a real king, he's a robber. If you compare him to the regular robbers, he's a king. He's a somebody. So that's the case that is us. So the first brisa, one brisa said by Shvuyin Malchus is Kishvuyin, that means the Malchus of Achashverosh. Then she's considered against her will. But if it will be a listus like Ben Netzer, then Ener Kishvuyin, that she did it willingly. The opposite brisa is going to say Shvuyin Malchus is considered is not Kishvuyin as Aser. That means Ben Netzer. But if it will be a Stamaganav, so then it is Kishvuyin because she didn't probably want. That's the end of the Gemara. What does it say? That there's somebody sometimes that she did it agreeingly if it was somebody that she has some prestige to get married to, and there's a good chance that she might be chosen as the permanent wife. But if it's a big king that there's a lot of prestige, but it's a very small chance that she'll agree, that she'll be the permanent wife, she'll be chosen, so then it's mutter, she didn't agree. And if it will be a Stam Ganav, that there's no prestige in being married to him, there's also no reason why she should have wanted him. Yes, I'm sorry that we're over time, and we'll be back with halacha in a minute.
This idea that the prestige that doesn't work for